Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to me. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back. I am your host, Christian Watson. Apologies for the very short hiatus. I contracted COVID recently, so I've just been a little bit under the weather, but I'm doing better. I'm doing great, and I appreciate all of your continued viewership, your help, your support, your love. It means the world to me, guys. But what would also mean the world to me is if you guys would think a little pensively about what's going to happen tomorrow. Yes, what's happening tomorrow, if you're in America, you probably heard about it. If you're not in America, you probably heard about it, is the Georgia senatorial election runoff between Kelly Loeffler, David Perdue, and John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock, the two Democrats and the two Republicans, respectively. Now, this race has had a lot of money dumped into it, as the Wall Street Journal reports, about $50 million in advertising, and about $138 million alone in the races. All to make sure certain voters turn out to support certain candidates, and the Democrats have also spent in just as much, well over $500 million. So the money in this thing is absolutely palpable. But what is even more palpable is the factors that are driving the money. This is not like any other races, as people will be so off to point out. With the possibility of a Joe Biden presidency now seeming very real, and him possibly going to occupy the Oval Office, these two Senate seats, for many people, reflect the beginning or the end of the United States of America. The outcome of the election between these four people, in the minds of many people, including Democrats, including Republicans, reflect the future, the next 50 to 100 years of this country. It reflects a possibility between court stacking and preserving the status quo in the court. It reflects a possibility between maintaining the current constitution of the United States geography and then expanding the United States geography to include more states and more areas for political purposes. It includes the possibility of all these doomsday calamitous situations that all come down to this single stroke of the ballot box. And if one says that may not be the case, or if one says that one may be overstating it by trying to append so much importance of the fate of the nation into this race, they are shot down, they're called idealists, they're called starry-eyed whatever, this is what I've been called at least, and they are neatly ignored. But allow me to encourage all of you again to think pensively about this. Think about it. The United States Senate, if these two gentlemen at the bottom of my screen win, which would be unfortunate in my opinion, if these two socialists win, would be at the behest of a 50-50 tie. And of course, Kamala Harris would be the tiebreaker. But imagine if a single senator from any side defects, any quote-unquote radical agenda that may be drummed up from the annals of the Democratic Party would fall grievously short of its aims. That's the practical answer to this. But I find that politics is oftentimes quite banal, and it is quite unfulfilling when people get the practical answers. Because guess what? As the ancient texts say, we wrestle not with flesh and blood. We wrestle not with, as Yoda said, this crude matter. We are luminous beings, beings of the higher sense. Even in the political sense, we are of the higher sense, whether it be with our minds being of the higher sense, orienting our actions to certain ideas. Why do you think there are so many people coming into Georgia and campaigning? Why do you think there's so much money coming into Georgia and being put towards turning out voters? Because people's minds are oriented towards a certain conception, but their conception is low. It's low because it underestimates the genius of America. Let's assume you're a Republican voter and you believe that America lives or dies because of what happens in Georgia. Let's assume you are like Nikki Haley or you are like Lindsey Graham and you believe that Georgia values and everything else is on the chopping block if these two on top of my screen do not win, if Loeffler and Perdue do not win. Let us assume you genuinely believe that. If that is the case, then you must ask yourself, where do those values come from? Do the values of a certain community, or a certain society, or a certain person emerge from the validation of a government agency? Or do values emerge from the heart, rooted in communities, in societies, in institutions, in concepts, and then continue to flow forth throughout the land? Values, my friends, are not preserved by force entirely. They can be. But initially, and most ideally, values are preserved by the value creators, you. You are the chief captain of your values. If you're concerned about socialism, then the best thing you can do is continue to instill value in people's minds so that when socialistic edicts come and are trying to be imposed upon them, they can reject them in an intellectually prudent way. See, people assume that if the government is constituted of a certain body of people, they control the fate of the country. But that assumes the country is controlled by force. America is not controlled by force. It was force that tried to beat African Americans into submission for so many years. Under the auspices of Jim Crow, it failed. It was force that tried to beat the colonists into submission beneath King George's evil diktats. It failed. It was force that tried to beat, you guys aren't hearing me, it was force that tried to beat America into submission when Hirohito bombed Pearl Harbor and when he tried to intimidate us, when we had nothing to do with his little conflict. It was force. Force failed. Now, of course, in many cases, force was then exerted back upon the people who originally exerted force, but force was not the locus of change initially. It's not force that gets things done. It is ideas, it is mindset, it is values. If you believe in freedom, if you believe in that mindset of Americanism, and if you can convince others to believe in that same thing, it doesn't matter if either of these kind of people get into office. What matters is what you think and how your constitution and your mind and your value system is oriented. Now, yes, I'm not going to say that government is absolutely useless. It's not useless. Government does have a sizable impact on our lives, which is why it is very wise to make sure the people you're voting for, people you're supporting, have the right values. But it's not the end of the world if people who share the wrong values get into office, so long as you know where you stand and you can coalesce enough energy, enough righteous energy, enough benevolent energy to rebel against the tide that would come and try to destroy what you know to be true in your heart. The truth shall win. The truth shall prevail. Do not treat this one election as the end-all, be-all of this nation, because this nation is a mighty, mighty rock upon a mighty, mighty mountain. And so long as we believe that, and so long as we take that truth, and we institute it into the bedrock of this country, when we keep preserving it, and we keep touting it, America will never fail, even if Georgia does fail. Think on it. As always, my friends, thank you. Please donate to my PayPal if you can. Subscribe, like, share, comment this video, everything. But most importantly, please stay pensive.